been a big weekend here at 10 Downing Street, but more so for a huge celebration celebrating 100 years. But of what? Hi, good morning, Neil Sean here in the heart of London, back at 10 Downing Street with you this morning. Hope you're keeping well. Thank you for your company as ever. Lovely comments, keep them coming. And also, really loved your comments on that recent report all about the Great Green Retail ripoff. Hard to say that, let me tell you. All about, of course, plant food versus vegetarianism, vegan. Lots of people agreeing with me that simply it's just a new way of extracting money from you. Keep those comments coming. It's lovely to know what you think. Because sometimes you think, am I alone? Am I the only one who thinks this? But clearly not. Back as ever though to your big breaking political news story of the day, and it's really just a fun, warm story, all because this particular street here in the heart of London is possibly the most famous street in the world. 10 Downing Street, the home of so many Prime Ministers and the current home, of course, of the Right Honourable Boris Johnson MP, our British Prime Minister. When I stand here on so many occasions and I think about all the people that have gone through that famous black door, you can't really imagine what it's like, because when you look at it back on those old reports, you think that really happened right here, right now. I think for my generation, the biggest sort of impact was, of course, the late Margaret Thatcher. She was in power for 3 successions, which of course was unheard of in that particular period. But I think the reason why Margaret Thatcher resonated with people was she was a forceful character, stood up for Britain and truly believed in what she was delivering. And of course, it's very difficult being, I think for her, the first female Prime Minister, because she had so much to brush aside to get there. I did meet her. She was a force of power and one of those people that really left an indelible mark on you, because she was, well, basically what you saw. You know, she didn't really take any nonsense. And I think more importantly, those around her who I've met since who were in the cabinet told me that when the door flung open of the cabinet room, well, things certainly shook. Possibly for all the wrong reasons in some of their cases, but nonetheless. Now, back to 10 Downing Street. Well, basically the Prime Minister, I don't know if you know this, and a lot of people ask me about the history of some of the places that I stand in front of. This, as I say, has been his home for many, many years. But when you get the job of Prime Minister here in England, you also get a weekend retreat. That is Chequers, as it's known. Now, that's in the heart of leafy Buckinghamshire, and it's been the Prime Minister's retreat for 100 years. Now, this weekend they had a party to celebrate those 100 years, but who attended and who didn't? Well, sadly, it does appear that David Cameron, the former British Prime Minister, couldn't make it because there was a clash of dates. But he was kind of famous really at Chequers because he was able to invite Our Gracious Majesty the Queen along with the Duke of Edinburgh, where they planted a brand new tree similar to the one that she planted at the very start of her reign way back in the beginning of the 50s. I think that must have been a really nice thing for her actually, but like all of us must have made her think, where's the last few years gone? But moving forward, other people were unable to attend this Chequers soiree too, including 2 former British Prime Ministers in the shape of Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Now, we're not quite sure if that was a political move or not, but others were more embracing of the idea, including Sir John Major and the previous British Prime Minister, Theresa May. Now, as I say, a lot of people ask me, what's it like, you know, in your job during the other job, not reporting on royals and entertainment? This is what I get up to on a daily basis, the political side of things. And people ask me, well, what's your political leaning? Well, I naturally couldn't possibly say. What I can tell you is, in this exciting job, you do meet all kinds of people. And I think more importantly, you never know, a little bit like showbiz, who's going to be in or out. So here's a little bit of history as we take a look at the splendid Chequers, the Prime Minister's weekend retreat. Chequers, which was built in 1565, was given to the nation by the Tory MP Sir Arthur Lee in 1917, and it was to be used as a country retreat for the serving British Prime Minister. The first Prime Minister to move into it was none other than the Liberal leader David Lloyd George in 1921. Sir Arthur had noted, though, traditionally Prime Ministers had been from the landed classes and had country residence of their own, which of course was to entertain foreign dignitaries, or really to relax and get away from all the stresses and strains of, well, a very busy working week. He said that with the advent of democracy, premiers were much less likely to own huge mansions, meaning they needed somewhere of their own. The Chequers Estate Act of 1917 was created a trust, allowing prime ministers the use of the mansion, which has 10 luxurious bedrooms, a tennis court and a swimming pool. The Chequers Trust receives an annual grant of nearly £1 million from the government for its upkeep. Tell you, if you're lucky enough to be invited to Chequers, it's one of those places that I would highly recommend. And I know I jest when I say this, but you never know. People from all walks of life do get invited for the weekend, particularly those that have done great charitable works or indeed amazing things for our great country. And when you do go in there, a little bit like 10 Downing Street, you can't believe actually some of the history that's there. Naturally, they're all the portraits of all the previous prime ministers. So when you go up to bed, you can look at the people that have possibly stabbed you in the back, or you've loathed, or maybe have even inspired you. One way or another, Chequers is really a place to behold, and I really do believe that it should be celebrated. And it's hard to imagine, isn't it, that it's 100 years of being, well, British prime ministers allowing to have that as a retreat. A lot of people have said, well, they shouldn't have two homes, they shouldn't have this, they shouldn't have that. A lot of people don't realise that the British Prime Minister doesn't really get paid that much money. It's not a great salary, particularly when you look at some of the salaries of the BBC. Now, as ever, as we say here on the show, I'd like to thank you for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this short film, and more importantly, I hope you've enjoyed seeing what I get up to at some points during the day. Thanks so much for watching. Neil Sean, 10 Downing Street, London.